Hello, and thank you for pressing play on today's episode of Stand Up. My guest today is Christian Finnegan. Our conversation begins at
about 36 minutes in, and the news starts at 11 minutes after the good stuff.
But Stand Up is more than a daily interview with some of the smartest, funniest, and most thought-provoking people and experts in the world. No, I open everyday show with a segment I call The Good Stuff, where I try to bring you some hope, happiness, and inspiration to get your day started. Then, of course, I've got your headlines and sound clips and what I call the best damn daily news recap anywhere you can find it. And you know what else? We're more than just a daily podcast. We built a community around this show of some of the smartest, funniest, most amazing, thoughtful, curious, and compassionate people from all backgrounds and all walks of life across the country and even Canadians. We meet on Zoom every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. We've got to know each other there, and this year we'll get together again for the second time in March in Las Vegas, March 28th to 30th. PodJam 2 is on. Tickets are available now in the show links. Go get them and join us for a 3-day experience with some of your favorite stand-up guests. We'll be podcasting, hiking, playing music, doing all kinds of really fun stuff, partying all together. Really looking forward to that, so get your tickets now. Also, all this week, I'm going to try to go live at noon on several different platforms, including YouTube, so subscribe to youtube.com/standupwithpete right now. It looks like I'll be talking to David K. Johnston at noon today. That is noon today, Monday the 9th, if that's when you're listening. I'll be going live with David K. Johnston, and I'm experimenting. I'm trying all kinds of new things to spread awareness of the show, promote the show, build our community, and I can't do it without you. So thank you for spreading the word. Thank you for writing a review. And of course, everybody who's a paid subscriber, you are the most valuable because this is how I'm making my living. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominick right now if you're not already a paid subscriber and sign up. Welcome to a couple of new subscribers that have just come in over the past few days. I was real happy to see that. Welcome to Becky Davis. Welcome to Matt McLaughlin. Welcome to Mark Otto and Jon Carroll, who already does so much for me in the show writes and performs all the music, upgraded his subscription, which anybody can do anytime. Wow. So generous. So grateful. I put a lot of work in each and every day and night to try to make this the best daily podcast you can find. So tell your friends, independent media, support us. Why? Well, hopefully I prove it to you every day. Except for Friday when I just played hooky. Sorry about that, everybody, but thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it very, very much. That's the opening. Hope to see you at tonight's Hangout, by the way. It's going to be at 8 p.m. East. You'll get a link if you're a paid subscriber. You should get an email with a link. If not, let me know. standupwithpete@gmail.com. That is my email for all correspondence. Always put the subject in there, and I could use your nature photos. So get outside and send me your hashtag vitamin N. Put that in the subject, and every morning I open the day, the email with a picture that's sent from somebody somewhere. No human man-made objects are allowed in that picture. It's just got to be all pure, raw vitamin N. Send them my way, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Also, send me your voice messages. You could just record a voice message and email that to me. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's get to the good stuff. And starting with some positive feedback from longtime listener and audio, radio expert, whisperer of mine, good friend and mentor, Mark Lipsky, who sent me this message complimenting the experiment I did with Bill Boyle and Kevin Richburg last week here on the show. Guests going through the news. It was a lot of fun. Here's what Mark had to say.
Hey, Pete, good morning. Friday, December 5th. I wanted to check in because I just listened to the show with Bill B. and Kevin Richburg, and man, that was clever. Using those two as a means of going through the news rather than taking 2 extra hours of your life to do it all yourself. Great device. You three play so well on the radio. And if I were producing your show, I would pull this out every couple of weeks or as often as I could get these guys to do it to give you a little rest on days when you're hosting a hangout. Brilliant work. Great show. Good device. Use it, use it, use it. Have a great weekend. See you, brother.
All right, there you go, Mark Lipsky. Love that guy, and he is doing great. He actually suffered a stroke back in April, and he's made amazing recovery, continues to recover, even did stand-up comedy, albeit in a wheelchair, but a hilarious set. We love Mark Lipsky, and I'm always happy to hear from you. Thank you very much for the positive feedback. I welcome that from anybody. Negative feedback, too. Tell me what you like and what you don't, and that's, I just thought, a good way to start off the good stuff. The other thing I just wanted to mention was something I just thought was fun, trying to take joy and be grateful moment to moment and mindful. Yesterday I was at the grocery store, which I never liked doing. Does anybody really like going to the grocery store? I certainly don't. And I was walking through in my just flatness of just trying to get it all done. I was wearing tights, by the way. I just come from a run. So there I was wearing men's leggings and walking through a grocery store. And I saw this family and this father with his daughter, who might have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. He took the bag, the produce bag, one of those very lightweight plastic bags, and he blew it up like a balloon, tied it in a knot, tossed it to her, and she played with it and acted like it was like a balloon and went all the way down the aisle like that. And it was real funny. And I thought, what a wonderful thing that dad just did with his daughter. I wish I would have thought of that when I was always trying to have fun in all the moments with my kids. It was hilarious until someone opened the door in the frozen fruit aisle and she pancaked into it and fell into a shelf full of frozen fish sticks. I'm just kidding. That didn't happen. She had a great time the entire time, seemingly, she was in the grocery store. And that's what mindfulness does. Catches that moment and try to be grateful for it. And also grateful for anytime there's an actual human being working as a cashier at a grocery store. I cannot stand those automatic checkouts. You always need help. It's annoying. I don't feel that's the case when the person is swiping. I don't swipe as well as the pros. So I'm still going to the humans whenever possible and making human contact with them and enjoying it. I love people. What can I tell you? Including Adam Sullivan. Hey, Adam. He was at our Hangout Thursday, longtime listener and supporter of mine, and I got him talking and opening up at the Hangout. It was fun to get to know Adam a little bit more. He emailed me and followed up, and at the end of his email, he told me his favorite quote, which is, "The obstacle becomes the way." Probably speaks to me more than the Bible verse or a motivational speaker. Right now, we are going through some very uncomfortable things that are greater than what happens at Thanksgiving, but it's our obstacle. We're just going through the phase of how do we become the way. It's a difficult path to fathom, but keep walking or running. That's the secret. A mile or 50 miles seems long, taking it all, but one step, that's not so bad. So keep walking. I love that, Adam. I love your interpretation of it. The obstacle becomes the way. Real good stuff for the good stuff. Submit yours. I'd love to get your favorite quote or saying or whatever you got and share it right here at the opening in the good stuff. So what else do I have for you? Oh, I heard this guy on a podcast, and I think he's pretty smart because he's a professor of medicine at Stanford, a neurosurgeon, and his name is James Doty, Dr. James Doty, and he's got some new research and the latest research in neuroscience that explains what manifestation does to the brain and body. Have you heard people talking about manifestation? According to Dr. Doty, our attention can be redirected in a way that can change our brains, literally. With the right practice, we can strengthen our brain's gray matter, he says, the neural tissue that helps us learn and grow and ultimately leads us to realizing our potential. So here's a little bit of like 2 minutes with Dr. James Doty on the neuroscience of manifestation. Take it away, Doc.
Hi, my name is Jim Doty. I'm an adjunct professor here at Stanford in the School of Medicine. What manifest really means is the ability to embed your intention into your subconscious. And then the salience network actually acts like a bloodhound, if you will, to search around your environment to see if there are things that are relative to your intention. And I'm sure everyone has been at a party or some event that's very noisy, and you'll hear your name, even in the din of all of this noise. And the reason is because you are attuned to your name, and it's very deeply embedded into it is your identity. And if you actually value tag your intention, you are just as attuned to that. The reality is that as a species, we evolved to care. If you focus on not you, but others, it actually works much better. Many people choose what we call hedonic happiness, versus eudaimonic happiness. It's great to want things. People say, I want a mansion. I want a Porsche. The problem is it's very self-centered. That sense of, wow, I got it, is very short-lived and it's very shallow. Versus what we call eudaimonic happiness, which is really how we were designed to function. And that's when you care for others, when you do actions that have meaning and purpose. 1, your physiology works its best. 2, gives you a sense of reward and pleasure. And 3, it gives you this deep sense of meaning, of purpose, and it's very long-lasting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Eudaimonic. Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's exactly what I'm thinking that this podcast does for me every day, and connecting you with each other and building this community. So that is where I'll wrap up today's segment of The Good Stuff. I hope you liked it. Send me your ideas. As always, help me produce this segment, this show. Can't do it without you. But now it's time to get to today's news. So if you don't want to be put in a bad mood, then maybe press stop now or skip to my conversation with Christian Finnegan, which is pretty great. Or take everything that we're trying to learn in The Good Stuff and apply it to this news, and don't let it affect you so much. All right, here we go. The big headline over the weekend, of course, was that the decades-long, generations-long Assad regime in Syria has fallen. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, the butcher, fled the country on Sunday, bringing to a dramatic close his nearly 14-year struggle to hold on to control his country, fragmented in a brutal civil war that became a proxy battlefield for regional and international powers. That's how the Associated Press put it. Apparently, he abandoned ship before it sank on him. He said he wouldn't do that back years ago when Yanukovych left Ukraine for Russia. But when Islamist rebel forces in Syria marched into Damascus and stormed his palace, they found a massive fleet of high-end cars, including Mercedes, Porsches, Audis, and Ferraris. Videos shared on social media show how these gleeful looters touring a massive garage in the presidential palace. Isn't that how it always happens? Very similar, that they aggregate so much wealth in all of these toys, and then people boot them out of the country or kill them and then raid them and take all of their shit. It's one way to go out. But the headlines, global reactions to Assad's sudden ouster from Syria range from jubilant to alarm. The fall of Bashar al-Assad after 13 years of war in Syria brings an end to their decades-long dynasty, and I'll bring you more on that. President Biden, of course, spoke about it, and there's a lot of fallout there's going to be. It's no way it doesn't impact, obviously, the region and the rest of the country, and how does it affect specifically Iran and Russia? It's hard to tell, and we don't quite know, but I'll be talking to people about it this week for sure. I'm really interested in this very important major issue that happened real slow and then real fast. So who's next? I mean, what happened in South Korea last week was not very well predicted either. So, and that continues to obviously unfold. So let's go to Seoul, South Korea, where so far the prime minister survived an impeachment move, but the party's leader, his own party leader, says that the president will resign. His own party leader called him a danger to the country. Prosecutors are investigating him for insurrection and abuse of power. So we'll keep our eyes on what's happening there in South Korea. Let's come home to domestic news. One of the top headlines over the weekend, New York Times, Tik Tok faces ban after U.S. judges uphold new law. Shutdown looms unless Chinese owner sells app by January 19th. They write TikTok is one step closer to disappearing in the United States after a panel of federal judges on Friday unanimously upheld a new law that could lead to the banning of the popular Chinese-owned video app by mid-January. You know, I'll believe it when I see it. The other big news story, and I talk about this with Christian, we have a great conversation, is that police are closing in on the suspect in United Health Care executive murder, and authorities apparently say that they think that they know who he was, but now the New York City mayor is a very untrustworthy character. Eric Adams was said the net is tightening, but I don't think it is, so it's hard to know. A British media outlet is also reporting that
even though there are enough ingredients to set social media ablaze with armchair detectives and true crime fans scrambling to find their own leads, as often happens in cases like this. But some of America's highest profile amateur sleuths are flat out refusing to help this time because, of course, this guy's murder has sparked huge anger, but not at the killer. TikTok sleuth, that Dane Shane guy or something, told his 2 million followers in a video, I don't have to encourage violence. I don't have to condone violence by any means, but I also don't have to help. Another said that while she's been tapped by police to help train officers on how to track suspects online, she told NBC that when asked whether she was working on this case, she said, absolutely the fuck not. And one more, this guy who you might know from TikTok named Tizzy Ent, he explained in the video, I have yet to see anyone online posting, we gotta find this guy, we gotta get him off the street. I'll play that video for you in the audio section coming up. But that's the update on the search for the suspect that seemingly no one wants caught, which is real emblematic and illustrates just how much anger we have at our fraudulent, corrupt health insurance and healthcare system in America. And now let's get to politics. The former president and future criminal president-elect Donald Trump doubled down on levying tariffs in his first days in office, minimized his prior emphasis on retribution against perceived enemies, and so much more. He sat down with Kirsten Welker for over an hour on NBC's Meet the Press. I will play a couple of clips for you, but I'll give you a warning before I play his voice. He also has vowed to implement his top campaign promises of deporting all those in the U.S. illegally, pardoning January 6 rioters, and extending major tax cuts, which are wildly unpopular. And in other news that's not political, let's see. Notre Dame Cathedral reopened 5 years after the devastating fire. Heads of state and dignitaries visited to mark the occasion, including the future president, along with Joe Biden, who they were sitting very closely, and people made a big deal about that, which I don't give a shit about. But after the French, apparently Americans were the second largest donors to the cathedral's restoration. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, which has permeated our culture for 2 years, has come to an end in Vancouver, Canada, which is sad for a lot of people, and she gets a much-deserved rest, and we'll see what's next for Taylor. And the ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz were sold for $28 million at an auction. Oh, my God. Some people have way too much money, to say the least. Also, just wanted to mention this funny story. A big rig carrying chocolate in the East Bay out in California caught fire Friday morning, causing hours of traffic chaos during busy commute hours. Approximately 30 to 40,000 pounds of chocolate were in the trailer, and nearly all of it appeared to melt. So there's these pretty funny pictures of just chocolate oozing out of the truck and onto the road. Those are your headlines, and now it's time to get to some of the audio clips that I got for you from the Sunday shows and more. And we'll end with some comedy, as I always try to do this time, from Saturday Night Live. They were live, and I've got some of the weekend update, which I always love to play and share. But first, President Biden came out to the microphones over the weekend to talk about the fall of Syria's Bashar al-Assad. He came out on Sunday afternoon to address the nation from the White House, just hours after rebel fighters ended the country's 13-year-long civil war.
After 13 years of civil war in Syria, more than half a century of brutal authoritarian rule by Bashar Assad and his father before him, rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen. This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. For years, the main backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office. And let's remember why. after Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, when much of the world responded with horror, Iran and its proxies chose to launch a multi-front war against Israel. That was a historic mistake on Iran's part. Today, Iran's main territorial proxy, Hezbollah, is also on its back. Only 12 days ago, I spoke from the Rose Garden about the ceasefire deal in Lebanon, a deal that was only possible because Hezbollah has been badly degraded.
There you go, President Biden on Sunday afternoon from the White House, the news, such huge news. In a related story, John Bolton was on CNN talking about Tulsi Gabbard and her relationship with Bashar al-Assad and Syria.
Yeah, I think she's totally unqualified to be a DNI, and I think her positions put her beyond the outermost fringe of American politics. When she visited Assad in Syria, he was effectively a Russian-Iranian ally. And what she said about Syria not being a direct threat to the United States, that was her justification for going, it's completely false. The Syrians and their combination with Iran and Hezbollah have posed direct threats to Americans across the region. They certainly pose a direct threat to key American allies, Israel and Jordan. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the files that may be uncovered in the Syrian government, if the rebels succeed in capturing Damascus, what they show about a number of Americans.
All right, here is some analysis from CBS News Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan had Andrew Boyd, who previously had leadership positions in the CIA, and the executive director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force, Muaz Mustafa, on the show to provide analysis. Here's a little bit of that.
Help us understand what it means to see the regime fall.
It's an indescribable feeling of happiness that this regime, this dictator who has made the worst crimes of the 21st century alongside Russia and Iran and ISIS, all of these horrible people have been defeated by a coalition of rebel forces that did not need any support from any outside country, not Turkey, not Qatar, not anyone. This time around, Syria was liberated by its people, for its people, and it's truly inspiring. And it's not just good reverberations for Syria, for the Middle East and Europe as well.
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what this all means. Andy, you've watched this region very closely for some time. At this hour, none of the officials that I have spoken with in regional governments, in the U.S. government, seem to know where Bashar al-Assad even went. Does it matter where he went?
Muaz may differ on this one. I don't think it does now that the government has fallen. I do think what unfolds over the next couple of weeks, and if the opposition actually treats all of the factions in Syria with dignity and respect and ensures their safety, we will have more understanding, because, there's a lot of atrocities that were carried out by the Assad regime. Those people are probably still in Syria, and so we'll see how that goes.
All right, a little bit of analysis from CBS News Face the Nation yesterday. Huge story, and I'll probably talk to one or two people about that this week. All right, before we get to the disgraced former and future president, let's get to a disgraced senator, Republican John Wayne Mullen? I don't know, some kind of weird rednecky name. Anyway, he was on CNN with Jay Tapper, who was asking him about Pete Hegseth's drinking problem, and this clip went pretty viral because of his stupid answer.
When you're talking about drinking at 10 in the morning, that's a drinking problem. Now, it doesn't mean that there should be a stigma.
And there's a lot of politicians that have a drinking problem, Jake.
Yes, of course. But I guess my question is...
Yeah, and then there's probably a lot of media that has a drinking problem, too. And now I don't drink. I haven't tasted alcohol in many years, and never have drank at all in my life, really. And so I really don't understand that. But there's a lot of alcohol that flows through Washington, D.C. on a regular basis, and I wouldn't say that people are alcoholics or they have a drinking problem because of that. I don't see it at all. I don't see that being a problem, and I really wish that the media would move on and start focusing on what he can bring to the Secretary as Secretary of Defense.
All right, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. Apparently he doesn't drink. Well, good for him.
Can't say as much for Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, who somehow still hasn't dropped out because he apparently is a raging, abusive alcoholic. So we really don't want him running the United States military entirely. Plus, he's just not nearly qualified. Not only does he have no character and apparently a pretty shitty alcohol addiction that won't serve him or us very well, but he has no right to be anywhere near running such a giant bureaucracy with a budget more than almost every other country in the world combined. All right, now, if you want to skip ahead, here's a couple of clips of the former and future disgraced president. He was on NBC Meet the Press. He was talking to Kirsten Welker. She asked him about breaking up families when he starts this deportation process. Here is that for about a minute and 5 seconds.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are
You're talking about separation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your border czar, Tom Homan, said they can be deported together. Correct. Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job.
Oh, God, he's such an unbelievably evil prick. But there's more. How about that? She asked him, why doesn't he just admit that they didn't steal the election the first time? They didn't steal this election since, well, here it is.
Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they are going around stealing elections, why
didn't they do it? When you say Democrats have control now?
Of the White House.
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election? Since they have more power now.
Because I think it was too big to rig.
Oh, it's too big. It was too big to rig. Biden won by almost 3 times the margin, but whatever. Okay, and finally two more real quick for you. This is a 1-minute clip about healthcare. She asks him, does he have an actual plan? And reminds him they had concepts of a plan, and then he just takes her answer.
And then he voted against. Nobody understands.
Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just concepts? Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. But until we have that, or until they can approve it, but we're not going to go through the big deal. I am the one that saved Obamacare, I will say, and I did the right thing. I could have done the more political thing and killed it, and all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No. Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
In your
absolutely
and then he voted
no
again.
sense whatsoever, but he gets away with it. Just a word salad, just barely sliding through this interview with Kirsten Welker, and then there's this clip of him saying that, he could just end the war in Ukraine. Why hasn't he done that yet? Well, he's not president yet, but he'll do it right away, right?
You said you can end the war in 24 hours. You've even said you want to try to end it before you're sworn into office.
I'm trying to end it.
You're actively trying to?
I am.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin since you've been elected?
No. Well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that because I don't want to do anything that could impede the negotiation.
But you
I want to stop
talked
it.
about
Let me tell you what I have talked about. Let me tell you.
Okay. All right. Well, just a few clips. That's all I could tolerate. Actually, I listened to the entire interview on Meet the Press, so I'm doing you a favor. But there's a few clips. Maybe I'm not. I mean, maybe you didn't want to hear them at all. But I'm happy to hear from people on how we're going to handle this moving forward. Now I want to get to, I got this one video from the TikToker, Tizzy Ent. This guy's always great and makes really good points. And here he is talking about the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, being gunned down, and how the internet sleuths like him aren't really doing anything about it.
At this point, everyone has heard about the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. That in itself is unprecedented. What is equally unprecedented is how much people don't care. I have yet to see anyone online posting saying, we got to find this guy, we got to get him off the street. I have, however, seen people making an argument, doing the hear me out thing. Women talking about how attractive he is, people calling him Robin Hood, people quite literally making fan art, and I don't think it's that difficult to figure out why. I don't think there's a single person in this country who hasn't themselves or had someone very, very near and dear to them suffer from the absolutely abysmal thing that is privatized healthcare in this country. People every day are denied for the most ridiculous reasons. Sometimes, even though they should be given care, just denied to deny them in the hopes that they will die before they can actually get the services that they have paid for. So when a man who is quite literally the face of that was murdered, the nation, for the most part, seemed to collectively shrug, with a few echoing old Chris Rock sketches saying, I'm not saying he should have done it, I'm just saying I understand. I can certainly understand why someone could be driven to do something like that, but also I can't condone it because it doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't address the problem that is the American healthcare system and how it is privatized for profit. Privatized healthcare is a lot like the Hydra, and to me, killing that CEO is a lot like cutting one of their heads off. It does nothing. It certainly doesn't hurt the monster. In fact, some might argue it makes it stronger. The reality is this person, if this even is the same person, I have my questions about that, but the shooter is armed, is willing to kill, and is probably not in a great space mentally. And we don't know what he's going to do next, what he might do if he was cornered. We don't want innocent people to lose their lives, so he should be found. But it's a big ask if you want people to feel sorry for a person who directly or indirectly contributed to the death of so many in the name of lining the pockets of shareholders.
There you go. That is one great take, or interesting take, I think it's fair to say. And there's more with Christian Finnegan coming up. But before that, let's go to the weekend update from Saturday Night Live with Colin Jost and Michael Che.
This week, New York City officials sent a tough message on crime. If you shoot somebody in the middle of the street, you better get on your bike, hop on a bus, and get the heck out of here, mister. The manhunt continues for the assassin who gunned down the CEO of United Healthcare on Wednesday. And it really says something about America that a guy was murdered in cold blood, and the two main reactions were, yeah, well, healthcare stinks. And also, girl, that shooter hot. It's also so crazy that the shooting happened 3 blocks from here in broad daylight, and the guy just bicycled away. Probably because they have every cop in the city guarding our Christmas tree. The NYPD now believes the suspect left the city on a bus from Port Authority. Thanks, but a Port Authority passenger who looks like a murderer actually widens the search.
New York City police say that they were able to get the smiling picture of the suspect after the man apparently was caught on camera at a local hostel flirting with a female employee whose name has been reported as Lucky S. Betchalive. President Biden has issued a full pardon for his son Hunter just weeks before he was to be sentenced on gun charges and tax evasion. Hunter celebrated his father's decision by celebrating way less than he used to. He just had a warm glass of milk.
It was reported that in 2018, the mother of Pete Hegseth, Trump's nominee for defense secretary, sent her son an email saying that she was embarrassed by the way he repeatedly belittles, lies, lies, cheats, and uses women for his own power and ego. To which Pete Hegseth responded, "Bitch, shut up." Hegseth, who has been accused of excessive drinking at work, said that if he is confirmed as defense secretary, he is, quote, not going to have a drink at all. But if he isn't confirmed, look out.
FBI director nominee Kash Patel, seen here realizing it wasn't just a fart, reportedly the target of an Iranian cyber attack. Apparently they were able to guess Patel's password because it was just two eyes really close together.
Sorry.
Donald Trump has picked former Congressman Billy Long to lead the IRS. Trump considered a lot of candidates, but Billy Long was just head and shoulders.
The guy just has no name. So funny. I love
The
it.
White House unveiled its Christmas decoration theme, A Season of Peace and Light, which is tough because Biden is always being told not to go towards the light.
Oh, Colin.
President Biden traveled to Africa this week. Unfortunately, he said it was to visit the birthplace of his friend Barack.
Oh, man.
It's the 90s, relax.
It was reported that Chinese hackers have infiltrated AT&T and Verizon to spy on American customers, which has got to be the first time anyone's ever said, "Thank God I have Sprint."
Donald Trump today made his first trip abroad since the election, traveling to Paris for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, where he rang the bell.
Oh, he's the hunchback. See? He's the hunchback of Notre.
Scientists in Japan have launched the first ever satellite made out of wood. Great. Now aliens are going to think we're poor.
All right, that's all I've got for you from Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update. Now it's time to get to my guest, as promised. Always great when Christian Finnegan is able to join me. And I hadn't talked to him in a few weeks. He hadn't been paying much attention to the news, so I tried to call him out on that at the top, and he put me back in my place. Because just before, he basically called himself an ostrich, said he kind of had his head in the sand. So I opened by calling him an ostrich, and, well, you'll hear what happens. Anyway, go subscribe to his amazing newsletter. If you like music, you'll love New Music for Olds.substack.com. Watch his specials. Follow him on social media. He's now on Blue Sky. Go get him over there. And here we are catching up with all that's gone on in the last few weeks. Always great with Christian Finnegan, who will be joining us in Las Vegas in March. So here we go. There he is, the ostrich himself, Christian Finnegan. That's partially why I haven't talked to you, because I think you're best when you're paying attention on this show, when you're paying attention to the news and what's happening. But like everybody else, including me, we put our heads in the sand a bit. Hi.
What a weird way to put the blame for me not being on the show on my shoulders, that I haven't been on since the election. And rather than just be like, oh yeah, we haven't had you on in a while. I think that's why. It's because you're better when you give a shit, and I know you don't give a shit. And so I have ignored you for the last month, which is what the case has truly been.
That was called me preempting what you just did, but it didn't work.
No, did it? Try to outsmart me, Dominic.
I'll edit it out. Christian, welcome back.
It is a pleasure to be here. And yes, before we started recording, I was saying that in terms of the news, I have been playing ostrich just a little bit as what they call self-care. It's almost like getting involved in the nitty-gritty of just daily political stories almost feels even more shallow now than it usually does, because it's the horse race part of Washington. The like, who's in, who's out, what's the conventional wisdom, who's up, who's down, seems so dumb in the light of what we're staring at for the next 4 years. It all seems so. I have whatever interest I had in the opinions of the Chris Cillizas of the world, and I had no interest, but whatever interest I had in hearing the sort of punditry, the people who treat this as if it's a big old game, I have had zero interest in hearing from any of those people since the election. And I know it's going to come for us eventually, but for now I've been keeping it at arm's length.
I think that's wise, and I think it's good
guidance, and I think that you're not alone. I think a lot of people that both listen to the show and don't have made similar choices, especially during this kind of transition time where you're trying not to feed the beast. And if the beast is Trump, much less the news cycle and the anxiety that it causes you, you're buying into them flooding the zone with shit, which is he's appointing the Justice of Doom cartoon villains. And of course we're going to react and get overwrought and terrified about Kash Patel at the FBI, Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense, and Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General. Yeah, that's and it may very well not play out. Likely it won't, those three names. And so why waste your time?
Yeah, to a certain, and I understand that there's a shock and awe aspect to it, that it's your Trump. When I say Trump, I'm talking about the Trump regime, not Trump specifically. It was like they're trying to set the Overton window by just seeing how far can we push, like how absurd can we make these nominations. And I wouldn't say that you're seeing the Senate grow a spine, but there is a certain level of like, all right, there's only so much human feces I'm going to walk in front of a microphone and eat every day. Like among the Republicans, I'm sorry, I can't get out in front of a microphone and a camera and defend Matt fucking Gaetz.
Right. And I would say the same is going to be the case, or maybe already is, with this guy, Pete Hegseth, who's just, do you have any jokes at all or thoughts at all about the fact that he brought his mom on TV, the alpha male? That everybody's making fun of him, and rightfully, but it's got to be
somebody on Blue Sky yesterday had a great post where they said that it's so funny that this is the guy who, for a guy who doesn't want women in combat, he doesn't seem to have a problem letting his mom fight his battles for him.
Perfect.
which is hilarious. And the whole reason, of course, that his mother is out there making the media rounds is because I'm sure you read that letter that she wrote to him. You are an abuser of women. It's my mother and I we were estranged. We did not get along. And my mother has never written anything like that to me before. And I am an abuser of women. No, I'm not. I'm joking.
And you abuse so many women, but even your mom.
Even my mom knew there was a line. But yeah, it really is. It's just, and then of course you have Elon Musk's mom out there too. It's these little diaper babies out there with their mommies. It's so pathetic. And these are the alpha males. These are the Chads. These people, they're just pathetic. We are being ruled by pathetic louts.
What do you think of the rise of all these billionaires? It feels like the commentary about billionaires has really started to ramp up.
Get salience. Yeah. Because there used to be, first of all, the difference, obviously, the wealth gap is cartoonish. Even compared, we look back at the Roaring 20s, the Daddy Warbucks days, the Monopoly Man. It's like that the Monopoly Man was a pauper compared to these fuckers. Just because he was wearing a top hat and a tuxedo. I think that for a long time, I think we told ourselves that this new class of billionaires was somehow more like us because, I don't know, they wear hoodies, I guess. He's wearing a leather jacket. He can't be square. He can't be some like weird Howard Hughes type rich guy. And there used to be at least a little bit of dignity amongst the ultra rich, that if you had the ultra rich, you had at least you had the dignity to at least go away and be by yourself and be rich in private, work behind the scenes, be the puppet master.
There was an idea, at least for a certain type of person of blue blood, that being ostentatious was not in your own interest, much less a virtuous thing to do.
Yeah, to bring that additional scrutiny, but also just because, like, you got other shit to do. You didn't have to be the most popular kid at the party. But it's like, with not just Elon Musk, but fucking Zuckerberg with his stupid gold chain that he wears around his neck, and Jeff Bezos with his weird jacked body and like silk shirts that he like. Why are you trying to be popular as well?
Not only that, but Elon Musk obviously played a central role in the election, but the appointments of so many of the cabinet secretaries, it's not surprising when any president appoints a wealthy person, much less even a donor. That's not unprecedented, but he is, like the last term, appointing a lot of billionaires. My thing is always, I don't understand the debate around that, Christian, around allowing a person to have so much wealth, because I think it's very simple. And I think of ants, birds, or tigers. If any member of that species took all the food, the rest of the members would eat that person. That's why I love that phrase, eat the rich. Like, I know we're humans and we're more evolved, whatever. We're not necessarily it's never be egalitarian or anything, but the idea that anybody's okay with one person having so much of the world's wealth, $1 billion, much less many billions, I can't understand the defense of that. I'm all for making money and working hard, whatever. We can have a thoughtful conversation about how much is enough. That's a thoughtful conversation. But what?
Yeah. Again, and I don't think people fully appreciate the magnitude of disparity. We're talking about how like the wealthy used to not want to call attention to themselves because there were, at least on some level, some potential consequences. Like you didn't want the IRS pouring over your books, or you didn't want the general public yelling outside your house or whatever. But these guys are so fucking rich that they literally are beholden to no one in anything. And that is eventually antithetical to a functioning republic.
Especially if you're paying attention and you realize that they're using their wealth to impact your life, your town, your environment, your laws. That's what they're using their wealth for. And the rest of it, they're giving it away to charities, which is a write-off. And then they're still choosing, that means, who's winning in charities. The government should tax that shit, and then we should decide what we're going to invest in.
Yeah. No, I don't remember if it was Dan Riffle or somebody. I think it was Dan Riffle, who's, I think, if I'm not, I might be talking out my ass here, AOC's old spokesperson. And I remember his Twitter handle was "Every billionaire is a policy failure," and which is 100% true. The rules should be set up in a way that it is not possible to acquire that much wealth. And it's not just that punish the rich or whatever. It's just that like things cost money, and where's the money? It's over there. Let's go get it. And I'm sorry, you're not earning that money. I'm sorry. You are not earning billions of dollars. It is not possible to earn billions of dollars.
Of super wealthy people inherited their money to start with, and then
it just compounds and compounds.
And then they fucking destroyed those, minimized and marginalized everybody in the company. So the people were doing, 3 people were doing this one job, and now you're the only person doing the job, and they minimize everything. They destroy lives and strip companies of any good thing just to resell them and chop them up and profit from it. It's disgusting. And speaking of disgusting wealth, let's pivot to the story that everybody is talking about, which is this healthcare and health insurance company executive being murdered in cold blood in your city. And my 2 specific questions are, what do you make of the fact that we're all fascinated by this? Obviously, the tenor, the tone of the brazenness of the murder, and you see it happening. And then specifically it being a health insurance company, and what's a worse, more hated than the private insurance? I can't think of an industry, including gun makers and fossil fuels and the banks. But what is the media fascination with it, and what is the cultural impact of it, and where do you come down on celebrating on his death?
It does not surprise me at all. I knew the second that I heard about it, we're going to be hearing about this for the next year. Just because, first of all, the planets aligned and such. Like Midtown Manhattan, like in the middle of the city, a brazen assassination. Like we haven't had that kind of thing for a long time. And of course there's the target. And of course this is coming right after an election in which a lot of people feel like we were talking about, that the rich basically bought control of the government. And so even though I don't think people are making a one-to-one connection between the election and United Healthcare, there is still this idea of just, man, we are just getting pissed on by everybody. And so seeing anybody take a shot at the king, so to speak, the king being the overclass, I think there is a natural feeling of, fuck yeah, finally somebody's doing something about it. I tend to think that that's a short-sighted and probably not wise way to think. I'm not saying anybody should be holding candlelight vigils for this guy. I'm certainly not. But I don't like edgelordism. And I feel like there's been a little bit of that going on where it's fine for me to say I don't have any grief for this guy passing away. This industry is garbage and it's ruining people's lives. And I have no problem with that. But a lot of the sort of gleeful zingers, I'm like, all right, how is this different than what the Gamergate people were doing 5-10 years ago? And also I think for a lot of people on the left, a lot of us still do have a gag reflex intact. A lot of us still do have a feeling of a physical resistance when we're being really cruel or really mean or really dishonest. There is something, what I'm saying is we're never going to win a douchebag contest. So it's like, why get into a douchebag contest with people who it's setting up an away game. It's like setting, you know what I'm saying? That is their turf. Being a fucking ghoul is their turf. And I just don't think people on the left really would see that through, setting aside the morality aspect of it.
I love all of what you just said in reaction to this. And it's really one of the reasons why I love talking to you, because your unique take on it and your ability to talk about it the way that you do is fascinating. And it really works for me and a lot of other listeners, but say it differently than left and right, because I fully agree with that, no doubt. But say it like what it sounds like is, for those of us who still think that our principles should be consistent and we should have a certain set of moral values and try not to compromise them, even though we're all hypocrites and not perfect, we still feel that this reaction's inappropriate. This behavior is wrong. Say it differently than right and left.
I don't necessarily think of it as being appropriate. I just think of it as being useful or not useful. And if you don't want to call it left, call it good faith, bad faith. That there are, which tends to, in my opinion, breaks down quite often left. But I just think that for us to gleefully celebrate the murder of a complete stranger, we're not always going to have that energy. You know what I mean? Nobody wants vigilantes just murdering people, because that's going to empower. Who do you think's up for random murder more? Them, like the incel Nazi Patriot Front assholes, or people who are making snarky comments on
I see. You're saying if we murder the bad people like this guy who are profiting off of people's death or denying their health care, then they are going to murder the Paul Farmers of the world, the amazing advocates working in nonprofits to do good things, the anti-Christian nationalists, if you will, because they don't like them. And
I think that there is a large section of people who would love nothing more than for the stigma on murder to be lifted. Do you know what I mean? And I don't.
Yes, I do. Yes.
And I don't think there's a lot of. Yeah, I don't see us coming out on top of the who can murder more people battle
and feel fine about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because I just don't think we're able to swallow that cognitive dissonance of telling ourselves that we're in the right.
That's a fascinating and important point about it. Yeah, really said. Okay, and the media's fascination with it, it's going to get us all attention to talk about it. It's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, my mother, and I feel bad, I've already been talking crap about my deceased mother twice within 10 minutes because I'm apparently a middle-aged white guy. My mother.
But what about you're about to say is going to have something to do with healthcare. So everybody's talking about their healthcare nightmare.
Mine, it's quite a little bit the opposite, actually. My mother, and not to
just wouldn't die.
Exactly. We tried. That pillow just couldn't push hard enough. Anyway, no, my mother used to work for United Healthcare. My mother used to sell United Healthcare plans. Now, granted, this was back in the 90s, so I don't know what's changed and stuff since then. But in my mind, as I've mentioned a couple times, I wouldn't say that my mother was a con man, but she was involved in a good deal of fraud over the course of her life. Social Security fraud. And my mother was not the most ethical person when it came to that sort of stuff. And so in my mind, I had always thought of United Healthcare as like a garbage scam corporation, even before that, based on nothing more than just my mom used to work for them. So clearly they can't have been totally on the up and up. And so for whatever reason, it's just like when it was into healthcare, I was like, yeah, that feels about right. That was just my initial reaction to it. But sorry, what was the question?
No, I just wanted to know what you thought about the media's fascination with this story. I just feel like it's everywhere and everybody's got a take.
Yeah. How can it not be? It's the insurance industry. It's literally basically everybody's projecting the plot of the movie John Q onto it, which was the movie about Denzel Washington taking the hospital hostage because they wouldn't pay for his cover his kids in operation or whatever. If there's one thing that I think everyone under a certain economic bracket can relate to is just annoyance, if not outright tragedy, just wasted time dealing with the healthcare industry, just the hours and the stress. I mean, it's absurd. I don't know if Matthew Sweet is. He was a songwriter. He had a few minor hits in the 90s. He had a song called I'll Be Waiting and Girlfriend, and amazing power pop artist. And he had a massive stroke a few months ago and while touring in Canada. And they basically had to have a private medical plane, take him back to the States. And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so this is a guy who was on MTV and he's been touring for the last 40 years of his life, still had no health insurance. And there's a GoFundMe that started for him that raised something like $500,000, which probably won't even cover half of his eventual expenses. But he had an update just today that he sent. I guess he's at least able to dictate. I don't think he can type, but he can at least dictate messages, basically saying, what are we doing as a country? Like, how is this not just a part of taking care of people? And do people understand just how much better? I'm not even talking about the moral aspect of healthcare, like just how much better things would run and how much happier people would be and how much more mobile people would be in their lifestyles if they weren't tethered to a fucking job, which has nothing to do with their healthcare. It's so absurd that our place of employment and our ability to not die, from falling down a flight of stairs, like these two things should not be linked.
Yeah. It's called job lock, and it's very unique to America. And it sounds like what you're saying is as a result of that singer-songwriter story and this grisly murder on the streets of New York City, that we're talking about America's immoral, broken, inefficient, unaffordable, evil health insurance, specifically, much less care industry, as a result of the guy's murder. I talked about healthcare for years and became best friends with the best health policy expert in the country because we talked about it so much. And then it went away after Obamacare because I could talk about that for a lot of reasons, but it sounds like what you're saying, what I'm hearing is people are literally talking about a broken healthcare system because this guy got murdered.
Yeah, because you're right. Because Obamacare, I'm terrified at the prospect of the next 4 years because I had open heart surgery a few years ago. If Obamacare was taken away, I would be fucked. There's no way I would be able to get with fucking open heart surgery on my resume, on my record. Like, there's no way I could get affordable insurance.
Well, I would also be screwed, and I have literally my body is a temple.
I worship it, so I worship at it.
I should sell little statues of me with just undies.
Sure, statues, but dick pics are so much more efficient.
Oh, never thought of that.
Nudes, tasteful nudes.
I just saw a woman who, I think we're done with the healthcare issue, and I do want to ask you. I just saw it's interesting. This is actually interesting. Young woman, 22 years old, made $45 million on OnlyFans, which is making videos of, and everybody knows what OnlyFans is. She's a virgin, she says. She's Christian. She's never actually had sex. I don't even care. That doesn't matter to my point. My point is you can make so much money on there as a woman. I don't think men make a lot of money. I don't know on OnlyFans, but yeah.
I'm starting at AnyFans.
Yeah. I actually do have an OnlyFan. It's one guy with two accounts.
His name is Chet. Good guy.
Named Chet. But the idea that I've talked to so many women who have been like, no, I'm serious. I've thought about it. And morally, it's safe in most ways. You don't actually have to touch anybody or see somebody. You're just going on camera and getting yourself off or posing or whatever, or having sex with your husband. Like, I know one couple that I was literally watching them because they lived off the grid, and they're attractive. That was part of why I was watching them. Then after a year of watching them build their own fucking cabin, I found out they had an OnlyFans making millions of dollars. And I was like, oh my God, all they are is a married couple having sex with each other. How do we do it?
And you never tuned into that portion of the programming?
No, I couldn't see myself paying for that. That seemed weird. I don't want to. Porn is free.
That I will say, I am always in such favor of people being paid for their art and for their work and things like that. But it does feel bizarre I can't fathom the idea of paying for pornography.
Yeah.
When it's just
talk about the ethics around it. I'm sure I could be convinced that I should be paying for it for the one time a year I look at it.
One time, huh?
Yeah, I have this one day a year. I call it Porn Day.
Yeah. It's called Boxing Day. I don't know. Just every Arbor Day is when you
beat the hell out of myself for watching porn after I'm done with it. Anyway, I just think it's a totally ethical way for people to
to the extent that anything is ethical, it's certainly not unethical. Is that less ethical than working a desk job at Raytheon or
no? Yeah. I don't know if it's healthy for the people watching it as much and their relationships and their thoughts on sex and sexuality, but I don't know. All right. Final thing I wanted to ask you is how much have you thought about the outcome of the election and the whys? Have you paid any attention to the bad takes, the good takes? Because I do think the most important thing is that we try to get it right. I don't know who's right or what's right. And like you said, a lot of us are taking time to look away from it. So I wonder if you have any thoughts at all about why it happened that you think are provable or important.
The more data that I see or whatever, you start to see that this wasn't some crazy radical shift. It was all over the country. So it had a huge effect on the Electoral College because everything, generally speaking, shifted to the right. But it wasn't some giant leap to the right. It was just 2% here. And I was encouraged, or not encouraged, the fact that basically, the fact that Kamala came onto the campaign so late that they really didn't have an opportunity to do a 50-state strategy. And so they just basically picked about 7 or 8 states, and they went hard as a motherfucker trying to win those states. And most of them, unfortunately, they still didn't win. But she did better in the states where she had put in time and energy than in the states that she didn't, which to me says the Democrat was going to lose.
Right.
Like that there were major headwinds. And I think I remember somebody saying, and I think this is true, is that this whole notion of an October surprise is probably a little outdated. Like information travels so quickly now and vibes get set in stone so early that I think after inflation, I just think it was always going to be a really fucking hard sell for people who don't give a shit about politics. You know what I mean? And because there's a lot of people out there. Yeah, there are a lot of people out there who didn't even know that Trump had been convicted. I don't know how that's possible, but there were a lot, according to a lot of exit polling and stuff like that, there were people who said they had no idea that Donald Trump had been convicted of a crime. And so it's, what do you do with that information? It does make you really understand that, like, the idea of just putting out good policy and hoping it trickles down and people notice and people attribute it to the right person, you got to just shout constantly. And somebody was saying that watching Fox, people who watch Fox News all day, they know how dumb it has to be because Fox literally just drills 5 sentences over and over again.
Yeah.
To where it's just literally, you could probably just put it on a loop 24 hours a day.
They do. That's what Julia Jeske's work is so good. Decoding Fox News. She logs it all. And So go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just think that I hate what is going to be asked of non-insane people for the next 4 years.
Right.
But it's like this idea of just, we're just going to put our nose down and pay attention to kitchen table issues and people will understand that the Democrats are on their sides. No, people respond to vibes and the thing about Republicans is they're really good at identifying what you're not happy about. They have no ability to fix it or to address it or interest in addressing it.
And then it's so well said. And then I was just going to add, not only identify what you're not happy about, blame it on the wrong people or reason.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And tell you how unfair it is for you that this is happening.
Yeah. And it's hard because it's like there is a doomer part of yourself that kind of wants the sky to fall and for everything to just collapse. Let's show you what the end result of your decision is. But the problem is it would crush so many people first. Before it negatively affected the Trump base, it would have to hurt so many other people first.
Yes.
And I don't know what the fuck's going to happen with these sort of roving deportation crews. Some of that I think is a little bit bluster, I hope. But it's like, what's going to happen the first time somebody gets in the way of one of these deportation crews and they shove somebody and he cracks his head on the skull and cracks a skull on the ground and dies? Like, what's going to happen? There's going to then be a big riot about it. There's going to be a big protest.
That's exactly the point I've been trying to make, but you make it perfectly specifically, which is I rest on the fact that people are terrified about what's coming for good reason. But the truth is we just don't know what's coming. And when that thing happens that you just described, there's going to be a reaction to it. The universe, the country, culture is going to react to that. And then we don't know what will happen after that. And in this timeline, that phrase, I think works because it could go in any number of directions. So we shouldn't be too fixed with certainty on what is clearly uncertain. So I think that's a really good analysis of it. Before I let you go quickly, I got to ask you what you think regarding the election of all the conversation around Joe Rogan and the comedians and their podcasts, men, and their effect on the election, this need for a Joe Rogan of the left. You've got to have a take on all of the people talking about that and attributing Trump's success and our change in culture to those guys and their podcasts.
Again, it's really hard because the right loves to embrace this notion of the rugged individual and the alpha and the lone wolf, or
don't be a sheep.
But the fact is, no, nobody falls in line like those people. Like, they love a hierarchy. That's why conservatives love football so much. It's like, there's a quarterback and there's a lineman, and the quarterback is more important than the lineman. There's a hierarchy to what people's jobs are. And there's sort of soldiers and there's generals. And I think that people on the right, like, they love falling in line behind Joe Rogan or whatever. It's like, the problem with people on the left is that a lot of us tend to resist that instinctively. And the minute we try to arrange some sort of hierarchy of decision making, it's a herd of cats, and it ends up being a lot of infighting. And I don't know this Rogan of the left thing. I don't think it can exist. It's like saying the right really needs a good trans. I'm not making that's not a good example. But you know what I mean? That's not. If there was a Rogan of the left, he wouldn't be of the left. He'd be on the right. The whole sort of falling in line, worshiping a podcaster is, in my mind, a right mindset. So I don't know what the answer is.
Finally, Blue Sky, enjoying it?
I am. Yeah. I honestly, it's a little clunky, and I hope it never changes, because it's just clunky enough that after about 15 or 20 minutes, I'm like, all right, I got to get off this thing, which is the problem. I don't get sucked into it for as long periods of time as I did Twitter. And the engagement is, I never garnered a ton of engagement anyway, but it's so nice to just scroll through this and not see fucking crypto ads and dumb aggregators and like weird sexist memes. It's just people having conversations, which is like, oh yeah, this is the way it used to feel. Yeah, I'm digging it. And if you're considering it, I will tell you, you will get over not being on Twitter within a week. It really, I don't think about it at all anymore.
Very good. Very interesting. Great to talk to you. Looking forward to having you in Vegas and trying some new things with you included in my future here at Stand Up. And always great to get your thoughts. Thank you very much for doing this, pal.
Thanks, Petey.
All right, there he goes, Christian Finnegan. Go follow him right now at Blue Sky. Go stream his specials. And most importantly, subscribe to newmusicforolds.substack.com. Catch Christian, me, and Maura live on Friday at noon. I'll be live every day at noon on youtube.com/standupwithpete. I look forward to your questions, your comments, and more. But check me out there. And I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout as well. Tonight at 8, I will be hosting another Hangout. I'm going to be doing this up through the holidays, it looks like, because I think people need it. I need it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight. Tell your friends as well. You can also get a gift subscription, a Patreon gift subscription. I'll put a link for that in the show notes. People were asking about that. You can get yourself, give somebody the gift of brain food, knowledge, and community here at Stand Up. All right, that's all I've got for you. Jon Carroll taking us out as he does each and every day. Go support him, buy his music, JonCarroll.org right now.